Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio with your hosts, Anthony Agati in New York.
And me, Lucy Liebkrieg from Chicago. We are so happy that you're here with us tonight. Our chat room is up and running, so feel free to further discuss the topic or ask a question. Now, if you lose sound on your player, just refresh your page or log back in. You know, Blog Talk can be a little bit wacky sometimes, and you can also send us an email at paranormalreviewradio@yahoo.com. And be sure to check us out on our Facebook show page. Anthony, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, Lucy, as long as humans have existed, there are countless stories of how one person has done something wrong to another. Wikipedia defines curses as an expressed wish that some form of adversity or misfortune will befall or attach to some other entity, one or more persons, a place, or an object. Now, granted, this is from Wikipedia. In particular, curse may refer to a wish that harm or hurt will be inflicted by any supernatural powers, such as a spell, a prayer, an imprecation or execration, magic, witchcraft, god, and natural force or spirit. Call it a curse, a hex, hoodoo. It has happened all throughout history. Songs, literature, movies, it's all there. Think back in your own life. It happens. We've all had a moment where we might have wished that something would happen to someone after we've experienced something that we felt was wrong. Can revenge happen by way of wishing or cursing someone? And if we were to curse someone, what are the repercussions? Do we pay a price if we were to do such a thing? Are curses actually real, or are they just coincidences? The Biochannel show Curse looks at curses and what they can do and have done to people, objects, and even families. Death, insanity, ruin, all of these things seem to have happened to the unfortunate victims, some never knowing how or why such a thing could affect them. Dr. David Marsh is a retired professor and holds PhDs in neuroscience and clinical psychology from Oxford University and Dartmouth. For the past 30 years, while teaching, he spent his free time investigating and studying curses, the etymology of curses, and the physiological and psychological effects that they have had on people throughout time from cultures around the world. Marsh has traveled extensively throughout the world in pursuit of answers. He's an expert on the worldwide sociocultural impact of curses and the associative effects on the family village social structure. Marsh has lived with practitioners as well as gathered an extensive collection of curses and the associated rituals. To date, his studies have been largely underground. As published, his findings would have drawn scorn from the academic community. Now, for the first time, Dr. Marsh has shared his findings with the world. Please join us in welcoming Dr. David Marsh to the show. Hello, David. How are you tonight?
I'm quite fine. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Dr. Marsh. May I call you David?
Absolutely. Please do.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'd like to start by asking you how you became interested in the subject of curses and what led you to begin studying them and the sociocultural impact of these curses.
Well, it all started not long after I graduated from medical school, and we went to do some medical relief in Bangladesh. And what we saw there, well, there was a young lady who was in the hospital, and she was being treated, but she wasn't responding to treatment. And the Pesci doctor had said, well, she's from one of the tribal areas, and she believes she's been cursed, and so she's not allowing the medical treatment to work. Well, by all standards of medicine, either a treatment works or it doesn't, and if it does not, then you look for something that does. But no matter what we did, and we ran a complete differential and came up with the same conclusions that the doctors had, and we basically were stumped. We could not understand why she would not respond to treatment. She had no family there, but she had a friend who was from the same village she was, and I spoke with this other young lady, and she said she needs her shaman, medical practitioner from her village to come and lift this curse. Well, I don't believe that there are supernatural elements to curses, but there may as well be for the effect they have, and this is a prime example of that. So I went out and I hopped on this wheezing, smoking old scooter, drove through the jungles, went and got the medicine man, brought him back, and he lifted the curse, and she began to recover. She began to rehydrate. Her systems were not shutting down anymore, and she recovered in a fairly short time. Within a couple of weeks, she was back out again. So I'm sure you're familiar with what they call the placebo effect. I'm sure you know suggestibility of the human mind. And these are prime examples of this. This is a prime example of exactly what happens with our own mind's suggestibility. Like I say, I don't believe there are any supernatural elements to curses, but there certainly may as well be, because if someone believes that can happen, the power of the human mind over the body and vice versa is so powerful that it can kill you. I hope that wasn't too dramatic, but in effect, that's what can happen.
No. So, did this incident that happened, did it change your outlook on what is a curse, or had you had the same type of thought after this happened?
Well, but before, I had placed all of my faith in medical literature. There must be something written about this, but there was surprisingly little. So, loving a challenge as I do, I wanted to understand this more, particularly the part concerning, I study many supernatural events such as superstitions. I studied a little bit about demonic possession to try to understand what occurs inside the human brain when these things happen. But curses are a very particularly good subject to study because nearly every culture, well, in fact, every culture on the planet has a curse myth. And every culture on the planet has people who believe that it can do what it's supposed to do. And what we learn from studying this shows us new and tremendously important insights into how the human mind works. We can chart how these things respond in the structure of the brain through the constructs of the neural network using fMRI. EKG allows us to see for extraordinary activity, for people placed under the stress, or as they resolve the curse. What does the brain do when the curse is lifted? What does the brain do when the curse cannot be lifted? We learn a great deal about the human mind when we do this. And that is vitally important. The human brain is the one frontier of science I do not think we will ever find the end of. Not really. Because the brain is capable of doing so many amazing things to trip us up. It's an incredible device. It's only 3 pounds. It's a 3-pound mass of jelly, but it is definitely, in my opinion, the most complex computer in existence now. I don't think that will last long, but it is a very complicated one. And you can't have anything that complicated. I remember attending a Federation of American Scientists convention where they was talking about how complicated today's computers are and that you can't have anything like that without bugs in it. And I thought, well, amen to that. Look at the human brain. I mean, you can see these extraordinary little tweaks and twists that occur with it. And many of the practitioners of cursing, voodoo, for example, things like that, they understand the glitches that occur in the mind, and they count on that working for them. And that's why curses are effective.
So one of the questions that I had while we were researching the subject was, how different is a curse from karma? I mean, do you believe in karma, and Could they both be the same thing?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to comment on whether karma exists or not, but karma is, I think, getting your due. You reap what you sow, sort of thing, and that if in this life you are not a good person, you will somehow be forced to relive another life to try to learn the lesson that you failed to learn the first time. A curse, on the other hand, as your partner so eloquently put, is the intentional wish of one person through supernatural elements to bring harm to another. And that, I think, can affect your karma if you're the one who puts the curse on someone. But to say that karma and curses are the same, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think they may work along the same lines, but I think a curse is different. And I think it's more of a now thing, while karma is a later after you die thing.
Well, going back to earlier times, whenever something devastating or, even if disease fell upon a society or a village, the people almost always attributed it to, things like dirty blood and evil spirits or curses. Could one think that this perception and the result was due to the fact that the religion was held high during these times, or was it just the fear of the unknown, and then this was just basically the logical answer?
Well, if you take into account that the earliest recorded pre-Babylonian times curses were designed as a way to keep people from either going somewhere or doing something that was taboo, or you faced a retribution you could not possibly fight, you can see how it would lead into what you're saying, where all of a sudden everybody says, well, I can do that too. And I don't know if that actually answers your question, but I think your answer lies in the origin of how curses develop, which when you come to understand that what is considered the most powerful curse of all is that those that are cast by someone on their deathbed, or by royalty, or by a member of religion, a religious leader. Now, suppose you had somebody who was all three, who said, if you enter this tomb, this all happens. And the pharaohs were considered the religious leaders or the kings, and of course this is where they were going to die, so more or less it's a dying curse. And it was their practice to reiterate the curse again on their deathbed. So this gave the triple whammy to the curse. And you see therein that it's very hard to find someone who's royalty and a member of the clergy and who's dying who could do the same thing today. But people also find that curses have evolved just like we have. The very nature of how a curse is cast and the very nature of what we expect it to do. It's not just a way to keep somebody from doing something, but it can be punishment. It can be retribution. It can be revenge. And that's what we see today in the curses we encounter. We have some interesting statistics on that, actually. I know you don't want to hear them, but we do. And that will be in the book that's going to... I have a book that's long due. In fact, before talking to you, my editor was screaming at me as usual, where's my book? And I keep tweaking it a little bit here and there, but we have some interesting... due to our research, we found some very interesting little bits and pieces that kind of, after a fashion, help lend a certain perspective on them. For example, 51% of the curses that we studied, and this is a total of 9,268 curses over the course of 30 years, 51% was suggestive response. 22%, surprisingly, were hoaxes and attention seekers. 18% were physical and circumstantial, such as clumsiness, thoughtless action, false pattern recognition. We had 7% that were natural or man-made, but this we're actually seeing on the increase, which is such environmental causes such as the release of gases, spores, toxic waste, radio waves that are emitted from power plants, although, frankly, I'm not sure that's an actual one that has inadequate data to support that one. At least no one's letting me have it. We had 1% that were unexplainable, and then we had another 1%, the final 1% that I find fascinating, which is we called wishful thinking. We formed this group for the odd few who actually want or hope to be cursed for some odd reason. So that's how we break down. This is how our research is broken down into what causes the curses to come from.
Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've learned, in ancient times, usually it's some sort of higher practitioner or higher authoritative person who was involved in the dark arts and sort of were labeled as witches, were the ones that could, quote-unquote, cast these spells. And then it somehow sort of migrated and evolved into pretty much onto the civilians, and anybody can do that. How, or I don't know if you're able to answer this, but do you know how that switch happened and how it graduated to the point where it wasn't so high that pretty much now everybody can do it?
Well, there is for every religious leader you have that's capable of evoking such a power, you also have a negative entity that's capable of doing a witch or something like that. Many of the ancient ones are attributed to witches or practitioners of black magic who had done this. But the evolution of it that we see from that you speak of occurs to basically, and this is going to sound a little comedic in the way it works, but somebody stumbles upon the idea of saying, "I curse you," and then something bad happens to that person. Everybody goes, "Oh, it works. Well, I wonder if I can do that." And thus the legend progresses. That's what we're leaning towards. But you're right. That's a very difficult one to answer because we simply lack the hard data from even as little as 500-600 years ago on back. We simply lack the hard data with which to work with. Everything must be extrapolatory in order to draw conclusions of how did this go from something that a higher authority could do to simple anybody could.
Right.
And even today, it's without some sort of badge of authority, people don't usually fall for a curse, and not unless there's some sort of authority figure behind it, and it doesn't have to be an accredited authority. But if they present themselves in that way, basically the human mind is wired in such a way that it submits to an authoritative figure. And so you have someone who is grandiose, has a lot of style and flair, and who says that they are a practitioner of this, and if they're able to frighten the hell out of you, they most certainly will succeed in what they're attempting to do. You would be amazed at the number of people in this country alone who are highly educated people who you would consider to be the last people who would believe they had been cursed. But I have come across many. They come from all walks of life, all social strata, all educational levels, and they believe that has happened to them. And even in my old and jaded state of being concerning curses, there are sometimes people tell me stories where I feel the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I can think of one in particular. It was a gentleman who had been in the Iraq War and picked up a souvenir. And his translator had told him not to take it with him, to leave it alone. And, of course, he didn't do that. And that afternoon, as they were seeking to move through this town, they were ambushed. The reinforcements arrived. Nearly everybody got hurt. And the helicopters that came in to rescue them and airlift them out, one of them got shot down. It was considered one of the worst things that had ever happened to them. And he got back to the hospital, developed complications. In the meantime, had sent this little trinket back to his girlfriend in the States. The day she picks it up, she said, and bear in mind, I wasn't there, so I didn't see all of this happen. But
right.
I feel him to be a very credible individual when he told this story. The day she picks this trinket up, and she's pregnant, bear in mind, she steps out of her truck to go to throw some stuff into a trash can, and a big garbage truck wipes her truck out.
Wow.
So he gets discharged from the military, returns home. The night he returns, they're looking at the trinket, and they are victims of a home invasion. He decides he doesn't want the trinket anymore and sends it back to Iraq to ask one of his buddies to throw it somewhere, anywhere, and all that. But as soon as it has left his possession, nothing undue happens again. Now, that's to me, that's just a bad run of luck and bad coincidence. But to hear him tell the story, the hair on the back of your neck will stand up, trust me, as he describes what had happened, where they are being shot at by individuals who appear to be an overwhelming force, but no one can see them. No one can find them. And these are trained military individuals. They don't fall for this sort of trickery. They find their target. They deal with this. They're trained to do that. But it's all said and done, and either the other side picked up all their wounded and the blood and everything else and left, but no one knows what happened. He said it was spooky, but he just believes it was a superior force. To this day, he doesn't believe he was cursed, but he said he wasn't taking the chance, so he threw it away. He had it sent back and thrown away.
And
I'm sorry, I do ramble. I apologize for that.
No, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. And I'm assuming that since then, since he did get rid of that trinket, that nothing has happened since then that he would consider to be spooky.
The last time I spoke with him was probably about 3-4 years ago, and he was doing quite well. Everything's been fine. But there are others, and in this book that I'm coming out with, these are the ones that scare me. There are others like that one. That one is in there, and there's others. People who have traveled abroad. This young girl who went to be a missionary on the border of Guatemala and Mexico and got tangled up with a bruja who placed a curse on her and a village girl. And this bruja, or witch, was reputed to be one who could steal the children right out of the womb. And this poor girl came back from doing her missionary work. They had to end it early on account of this confrontation. And she proceeds to meet a nice young man, get married, and curse is long forgotten, and she gets pregnant, happy occasion for all, stillborn. Then she has another one, and this one is an early termination, and she remembers the curse. And she goes to her church, and finally, through the good efforts of a man I actually do know from Peru, where I had been a jungle doc for many years, he's a Catholic. He's a Catholic priest down there, but he is Peruvian, and her mother-in-law gets this priest to come and remove the curse. So I hear about this, and I talked to him, and I said, when did you get into that business? And he said, well, you know, I was a psychology major before I went into the seminary. And I said, yes, I know that. And he said, if it works, as long as your solution is bigger and badder than the original curse, or they believe it is, then it removes it. And then she had 2 children following that, and they were perfectly healthy. But the whole point of this is that as it occurred to her, and we all know that birth is we've been doing it for millions of years, but it does have complications. Every day, women have serious problems with the birth of a child, with delivering a child.
Right.
But and it's not attributed to curses, but all it would take is for one instance like that, and suddenly she remembers that curse, and her own body will work against her to reject a fetus, or even the birthing process, or even the conception process itself can be interrupted by stress like that.
Right.
You know, David, back, we had Jason Haxton on our show a few months back, and he's the owner of the infamous Dybbuk box, for which the movie was based on. Now, do you believe his story and the mystery and curse surrounding the Dybbuk box?
I haven't had the opportunity to examine that. When we examine something, we approach, and that would be an excellent one to have a look at, because the story is quite convincing. When we go to look at an object like that, we don't. It's probably not what you think. We try to take every possible measurement we can. We try to look at it with everything from time-lapse photography to mass spectroscopy, everything that we can to try to determine if there is any abnormality that exists in an object. Now, this isn't to say that this is how we determine if it is supernatural, because we have no way to say if something is supernatural. But if something occurs and we can see an abnormality, that might actually lend some evidence to that. And while I do not believe in that supernatural thing, I'd like to think that I'm open-minded enough that if somebody came with scientific, studyable, and replicable proof that a supernatural event had occurred, I like to think I'm open-minded enough to say that happened. The story that I hear about the Dybbuk box is such that I think that if there's a good candidate, it'd probably be that one, to find something that would be anomalous. I would love that opportunity. If I could get UCLA to let us have the labs for a few days, I think we might find something. One never knows.
That would be interesting. That would be very interesting. But take into account what you just said. I did read about what is called a suicide table located in Virginia City. Now, it appears that the first owner of the table committed suicide after losing his fortune. And several suicides have happened after the first one until this table was put out of service. Now, do you believe that that act of suicide caused the table to be cursed or prolong what happened?
Well, I can't say that the table is cursed that would cause that kind of suicide. 7 is a relatively high number for a coincidence, but still, it could remain coincidence. Because if the tail of the curse follows the table, it places the subliminal thought in your mind when times are hard and desperate, like maybe this is the way out. If you look at the Sea of Trees in Japan, you're looking at the same thing. There's a legend. If you're familiar with the Sea of Tree in Japan, there's a legend where a great battle was fought, and a group of samurai ran into the forest in order to take respite before they re-engaged the enemy. Mythical creatures, perhaps they were demonic, perhaps they were ghosts, had appeared and told them that their fight was fruitless, to come to the other side, to die with dignity and come to the other side, to take the suicide route. And it's better over here than it is on the earthly plane. And the Japanese government is really not happy about that legend, but it was suppressed and sort of died down for a long time. And then a book in the 60s, I think it was written about a couple that went and committed suicide there, and it all started back up again. The two schools of thought on that are people who walk in there may not have the intention to commit suicide, but walk in and are coerced into it by these entities. Or they go in feeling upset or with the sole purpose of going there to commit suicide. Occam's razor, if I may paraphrase, and I don't like doing that, but as we all know, the paraphrase that's most common with Occam's razor is the simplest answer is the most likely one. And I think the same would hold true for both the table and the Sea of Trees, that the most likely answer is that people sit down, they're depressed, they think, well, somebody else killed themselves here. Maybe that is a good idea. Now, we all know that's not a good idea, but when you are facing the stress of serious financial or loss of love, grief is a very big thing that can cause suicide. You look to your environment, and if you are aware that that has happened here, it will play on your mind. This is another one of the tricks of the mind. And that's what I would tend to think occurs both at the Sea of Trees and both with the table in Virginia that you speak of. Now, I've been to the Sea of Trees, and I've never seen anybody who said, well, why don't you kill yourself? No ghosts, no apparitions or anything like that. And the Japanese, God love them, they are romantic people who just absolutely love a good story like that. And I can see where it would be appealing and it would have the allure of that sort of thing. But frankly, I think that both the table and the Sea of Trees are coincidence, that people go in there, this is where I'm going to go and end it. Whether it's subconscious or not, I cannot say, as I have not spoken with these people, but I think that's probably what you would find in both cases.
Dr. Marsh, why do you think people believe so much in curses? Is it so easy to believe in, or is it the mental state of the individual themselves that lends them to believe it much more easily?
It's because we want that to be true. We want that to be a supernatural power that will act on our behalf when the laws of man fail us. Please come in and do this for me. I've been wronged. I need this. We want the psychic to speak to the dead. We want them to know the future. We want the retribution that the law of man so often fails to deliver. And that is a very large portion of why people believe in them. Our own suggestibility is such that if we do not know what it is, we become instantly afraid. It's part of the fight or flight process of the mind. There's a little thing I love to do, and someday I hope you get the opportunity to see it, because I think you're both very intelligent individuals, but I do love scaring people. So what I would do is come there and I would say, you don't believe in curses now, do you? You say, no, I don't believe in them. You believe the possibility exists, though, don't you? Well, anything's possible. And so I say, well, let me demonstrate. And I pull this little wax doll out of my pocket, and this is a genuine, bona fide wax voodoo doll. And I reach over and pluck a hair off of your shoulder, and I say, now I want you to see what you're feeling right now. Look at your eyes. They're dilating a little bit. Your pulse is increased. This is your fight or flight. The galvanic response to your skin. You don't believe that this could happen, but there is that primitive part of your brain, that part that dates back to when we were all of the lizard persuasion rather than the mammal persuasion, the part that says this looks dangerous. I don't know who this man is. I don't know what power he has, but he seems to know what he's doing. And frankly, that part of your brain is telling you, just go, get out, go, leave. Don't do this, or hit him or something, but don't let him do this. And it's that part. That's all I need, is to create that tiny little gap, and before it's over, I can have you believing you might, just because. And then take it away. Give you the doll, and it's over. You can remove the hair, and everything's good. But that'll stick with you. You believe me, it frightens people to see that happen. That's suggestibility. Just right. Like if I sit there and I tell you, well, see, I'm working for this pharmaceutical company, and they're doing fantastic things with I'm sure you've heard of the spirit molecule, DMT.
Right.
I certainly hope so, because that's phenomenal research. Well, there's an adjunct research that goes along with that. It's a new molecule that they have discovered that will virtually remove fear. You take this pill, and you can overcome your fear of heights, your fear of spiders, anything like that, your fear of talking to women, which seems to be a rather large one in this country, and you will overcome that. Well, it's the placebo effect. There's no such drug, there's no such company, but Darren Brown, if you're familiar with him at all, he's the British mentalist, does this in his show called Faith and Fear. You should watch it. It explains a lot about the mind's. He's an absolute expert on suggestibility. I thank God every day that he decided to go into show business instead of crime, or we would be in serious trouble, because he's very good at what he does. And that is the power of suggestion. We all know the placebo effect. The ability of a curse to work, the ability of self-healing, all of these things stem from the same root, suggestibility. That's my take on it. Now, I have found no evidence, scientific or otherwise, to support another view yet, but I keep hoping.
You know, I guess this can go along the lines of this whole placebo talk. You know, back in 2010, there was that big devastation with Haiti. And I can remember hearing and reading and listening to many things that went viral. And one of the major things I remembered, maybe it was a few days right after that devastation that happened in Haiti, was this whole deal with the devil that the Haitians had, and that it was some sort of curse, and this was the aftermath of that. My first question is, do you believe that to be true? And two, how do you think, you know, just because it is written somewhere that this supposed action had happened and that the Haitians, to free them from the French, had, you know, signed this document with the devil to have them free, created that stir within the news. I mean, it was in mainstream news that they were reporting this. It just fascinated me that they were broadcasting it to the effect that, you know, as possible or as a possible action or reaction to this action of devastation in Haiti. It just amazed me. But my question then is do you believe it to be true at all? And how could that have been brought out into mainstream, which is kind of odd for it to have done it that way to begin with?
Well, again, I do not believe that that's what that is true. But it wouldn't matter what I think. They believe it's true. And why would it reach mainstream? Well, that's relatively easy, because when you consider the fact that that would be a very sensational thing, that would make the mainstream. And the detail of it is fairly exquisite, and it's appealing. I would like to know if that actually happened, but I do not believe that is what occurred. To make the deal with the devil, I think the devil already has a stacked deck. It's up to us to, you know, we're faced every day with the be good or you be bad. Now, which is easier? Right. I mean, really, which is the easier choice? It's much easier to go ahead and run this little stop sign here. Nobody's going to mind, you know. Oh, it's just the law of man. But it's still bad. You placed lives at risk. It's possible you could have placed lives at risk. So you're being bad. It's easier to be bad. I think the devil doesn't need to make deals as much as we would like to think that he does. I think he's already got the deal. I think our job is to undo the deal. And this follows through with the religious curses, such as the generational curses. That one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why would God place a curse on your grandchildren for something you did? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And frankly, as we pointed out in the research, there's a lot of people who would, and let's face it, it is much easier to blame something that cannot be held accountable for all the things that went wrong than it is to say the storm just hit us or this accident just happened. It's much easier to say, or I stuck my hand in the electric socket. No, that was done by a curse. It's a cursed electric socket. I swear that's what it is. It's much easier to blame something that cannot be held accountable. And the supernatural is above and beyond us. It cannot be held accountable. And a lot of what I have seen in the course of studying curses, that's what it amounts to, is somebody who's just not wanting to accept responsibility for their own action.
I was just going to say that. It's all about the responsibility. Nobody wanted to own up to it, and therefore blaming is much easier.
Well, look at what happened on Wall Street in 2008. Nobody wanted to accept responsibility for that, and they were willing to blame anything. I believe at one point some cad on Wall Street had even said, "Oh, this is an act of God." And I said, "Force majeure contract? I don't think so. Give me my money."
Well, okay, so like you said about the generational curses, one famous family who's had a curse mentioned in connection with them is the Kennedys. Are all the things that have happened to them in particular just coincidences? I mean, it just seems there has a lot that has happened through the generations to this family.
Yes. Well, take into account that they are a very high-profile family, number one. If you recall, old Joe Kennedy had, for lack of a better term, was a bit of a bootlegger in his early day. That's how he made his fortune. And his sons were groomed to go into politics, which, as we know, politicians tend to become targets of assassins and the like. It's much easier to say that the Kennedy curse caused Chappaquiddick other than to say Teddy had a few and drove off the bridge. Too many and drove off the bridge. It's much easier to say that they are suffering from a generational curse than it is to say that I can't remember the chap's name that shot Bobby, and then we had the Lee Harvey Oswald who shot Jack Kennedy. It would be all too easy to say that that's a family curse, but they were very high profile. They were extraordinary, and they were in a dangerous business. Politics is a dangerous business. You have, just in your neighboring state of Arizona, wasn't one of their politicians just recently was shot. You see, I don't think her family's cursed. I don't think the Kennedy family is cursed. I think you curse yourself if you decide to be a politician. It's it's part and parcel of doing business as a politician. If you're so again, Occam's razor says we have to look at all the facts to determine exactly what it is, and what people fail to see is all the good things that had happened to so many of the Kennedys. Yes, many of them did. The young Kennedy boy who died in a plane wreck. People die in plane wrecks every day. We know this. That he happened to die in a plane accident doesn't necessarily make that a curse. But you look at all of the Kennedy children who have been highly successful, lead wonderful lives, and nothing has happened to them. Did they break the curse, or did the curse jump over them? Or, as people like to tell me, it jumps to certain ones of them. I'm sorry, but the math doesn't quite work. And I think that those men took jobs that were dangerous, and I think they faced that danger well. And the fact that they died for the things that they believed in, I think we should be more concerned with paying tribute to that than to saying they suffer a curse. That's a bit demeaning, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
I agree. It sort of, it diminishes the worth of the individual and the family as a whole by, creating this whatever this is, this curse that you're implementing that has contributed to the horrific events that have happened, putting that up on a pedestal instead of honoring, like you just said, the family itself.
Yes. Now, maybe not everyone agreed with their politics, but the point still remains that they made the effort, they took the risk, and they paid the ultimate price for it. So I would tend to think along those lines. When it comes to curses, especially those that are individualized to people on an everyday level, I can't help but feel a bit sad for the fact that there are many out there who would use the same ulterior motives, such as there's a curse on the Kennedys, to say that curses exist, and they prey on people. I know one gentleman who's paid over $30,000 to have a curse removed from himself, because he constantly loses his money, his cars are constantly destroyed, and all of these things occur. And when you look at things, I'm afraid even you could walk up there and not speak to the man but 5 or 10 minutes to discover it's not even bad luck. I'm sorry, I won't even give it that. The man is clumsy in the extreme. I mean, he's talking on that phone. He sets his wallet down and walks away. In the course of talking with him for one day, I saw him talking and say, "Oh, my wallet, it's gone. They took it. I'm cursed. You see what I'm talking about?" And I walked back away and said, "There's your wallet. You're not cursed. You're clumsy, and you're not paying attention." I would say my trademark to him, which was normally I would have said, you're an idiot, but lawsuits can. When you start doing that, you're not cursed, you're an idiot.
What's the most in all your studies at home, in America and abroad? What's the most horrific curse that you've ever been involved with or come across?
Oh, that's a good question, because there are some that are absolutely just one in particular that involved a young man of Native American descent. He was a wee bit. He didn't like to believe in the old ways, and he drank. He was a drinker. And his grandfather happened to be one of the lead shaman of his tribe, and I won't tell what tribe because I promised I would not do that to them, although his story does appear in the book. And he got drunk and violated a circle, a very ritualistic circle. From that time on, and this clearly is not bad luck, this goes far worse than bad luck. He developed an almost Tourette's sort of syndrome where he'll be talking to us rather normally and then begin to shout very loudly in an unintelligible sort of thing, and he has no idea this is occurring. When we ran the MRIs and the other brain tests, we see that he has seizure activity occurring, frontal lobe seizure activity occurring. But there's no history in his family. We can find no reason why that, and I will be the first to admit that we do not know more about seizures than we do know, anyway, as a given with anyone. But there was no reason for that to happen. The interesting aspect is he can be walking along and fall asleep, literally fall asleep and walk out in front of a truck. He's been hit twice and didn't know it was happening. Now, we see this activity going on in the brain. We see these seizures occur. But that it should happen right after that, right after he had a few too many and went in and violated the sanctity of this. His grandfather is adamant that he has, the man has irritated the spirits, to say the least, and they are punishing him for this. It's one of the most incredible, but it's also one of the saddest ones I have ever seen, because despite his efforts to come to grips with this and remove it, there's a certain agency of the U.S. government that seems to have a certain amount of control over the Native American peoples, who have now placed this poor lad on so many medications he can't think. He basically lives his life in a stupor. And their solution to this, their solution to his dilemma was to drug him and forget him. He's been in and out of institutions, and this was their solution. Now, consider the brain's suggestibility. I really don't think this is it. We have medical evidence that he is having episodes. But why? And why should it occur right then and there? The time, it could be coincidence, and I imagine it is, but when I hear shaman, and I don't care what tribe they're from, describe their spirit world as compared to ours, it's very compelling to think if we're going to find something supernatural, that's where we're going to find it, because their belief system is so strong. It has longevity. It has a richness and a volume that the standard religions that we have today simply cannot match. It is very rich and very detailed, but it also seems to have a concurrent theme, is that the spirits to be benevolent. They are not these vindictive creatures. Well, they do have some. Kokopelli was clearly a mischievous little devil, but by and large, the spirits are a benign group. They're to help. And I can see where if you were having some sort of ceremony or ritual that this young man had violated, I could see very well where a spirit might decide, you know what, that's not going to happen again. You're going to get punished. We're going to make sure the others don't do this. And that would make more sense to me than the Kennedy curse, for example.
Right.
Yeah. So that would be the one that I consider the most horrific, because the young man had a sparkling future. Despite the fact that he was somewhat of a drinker, he was incredibly intelligent. You should have seen his report cards. His grandmother was so enamored with this young man. Straight A's. He was destined to become something. He was going to leave the reservation and become something. But in his effort to do so, he turned his back on the old ways and had decided there was nothing for him from that. And in order to prove it, and he'd had a few drinks, and he decided, I'm going to prove to them that there's nothing to it. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. Instead, that's where he is now is what occurred. And I cannot help but feel so bad for this young man and his family. It was all gone in the blink of an eye. And if it is the work of the spirits who cursed him, well, that would certainly change the landscape a bit, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, David, I am Cherokee, and the way that you do describe the belief system, it is very, very intense. I mean, our beliefs are very strong, and a lot of what we consider curses, a lot of people truly believe, but that has to go back to the fact that our belief system is so ingrained to us from the time that we're small that sometimes it's a little bit hard to look at maybe a scientific side of it versus what you've been taught from birth.
Yes, and therein lies the rub of the thing, isn't it? Because I can go there with my scientific knowledge, but it is when you get to someplace like that, to Native Americans, that it suddenly occurs to you that despite all we know, we do not know everything in the scientific community, and that we may very well never be able to quantify or measure exactly the power that rests within the spirits.
Mm-hmm.
You go armed with all your equipment and your research assistants and all of that, and you get there, and there you are faced with this little old man who's sitting there with a calmness that you can only wish you had. And he has an understanding of the mechanisms of spirituality that I didn't get that sort of indoctrination in Catholic school by any means. Of course, I was a little monster anyway, so I didn't pay any attention. But I can't help but admire this man, because just from the calm, he's like, sure, go ahead, set your equipment up, do what you have to do. But I can tell you now that you will feel it. You will not measure it, but you will feel it. And he was generally right. He was absolutely right. And I don't know how that happens. I have no explanation for that. I wanted to try. I know that when the few that we have gotten, one was an Apache that consented to come in. His alpha wave activity was right up there with the absolute best of the meditation champions of Tibet. His ability to maintain an even heart rate, temperature, all of that, to control all of that in what should have been a stressful situation. Well, I was stressed while we were doing this test on him, all right? And my heart rate increased, but he did not. And he said, it's because I know the difference between real and not real. And I thought, well, if you don't think this is real, I would hate to see what you do think is real. It would probably scare the crap out of me, frankly. All right, I babbled on and off the track, and I apologize again.
Oh, no.
I have a great deal of respect for that.
Sure.
Well, the last thing that I would like to ask you is, what do you recommend to someone who believes that they are cursed?
That's an excellent question, and it's one that people had hoped the book would address, and so I have made the very good attempt, is that to understand what's happening to you, you have to understand yourself. And I am a very big proponent of support groups. So if you have a support group, you can find a support group for those who have, if maybe you can't find one specifically for curses, but you can find survivors of supernatural events and things like that. If you can find that, that's where you should start. Because those who have shared your experience will know resources that can, how to find the resources, where to get them. They will be able to empathize far with you. And I, please, as a psychologist, I would never, ever demean my profession or the fine people who dedicate their lives to this. But if you do want to go and see a counselor, make sure you gently and carefully feel them out for how they might take the revelation that you had been cursed. Because we all stand in awe of these curses, and frankly, I think you're missing everyone misses the big picture, all right? Everyone looks at this supernatural entity that could do this or could do that. Well, what if it's your brain that's doing this? Because I can show you 9 times out of 10 it's your brain. That is pretty awesome in itself. If your mind can do that, think of the things you could accomplish. And you want to know yourself, and you can not only rid yourself of this curse, but you can control that. You can be so much more. And that's the whole purpose of studying curses, is to help people to become that which they can be, not that which they're willing to settle for.
Well, speaking of help, can you tell our listeners about your book? When can we expect it, and what's the title of it?
You sound like my editor. Yes, the name of it is Through a Misted Glass. It talks about 10 curses, and it talks about the research that we have done into curses, the conclusions that we've drawn, and it lists many resources that I know that are available. There are alarmingly few resources available to those who have suffered from a curse. But bear in mind, whether they are supernatural or not, the effects are very real. The pain that you suffer is very real. The stress that you suffer is very real, and all of these things affect your health. So it is imperative that people get help when they have suffered from something like that. I don't care whether it's a curse or I just met I live in Yucaipa, California, and just met a lady today who saw a ghost. Now, I don't know if she saw a ghost, but I can tell you this. She believes she saw a ghost, and the stress is tremendous, and she needs to have resources. So I list as many resources, as pitiful few as they are, but the Internet provides opportunities, and so the segue from support groups is, if you don't have one, start one. Start one online. I mean, I might know a great deal about curses, but the Internet is all magic to me. I'm lucky I can check my email, frankly, and I'm happy with that. But there are those out there who could start the support group. Start sharing your stories. Talk about it. You will develop the resources with which to help yourselves get back in control of your life, because that's what a curse is all about, is taking your control away from you. And that's all they want you to feel. Especially if there's a story in the book about these 2 girls who, they both love the same boy, or the boy finally picks this one girl, so the other girl gets mad, drives to New Orleans, which they lived in Louisiana anyway, and had a curse put on the other one so that every boy she ever went with after that would become sick. And they did. Like clockwork. Within 2 weeks of being together, these boys would become sick. They wouldn't let me touch them with a 10-meter cattle prod. They probably would have let me touch them with a 10-meter cattle prod before they would have let me test them, see if something genuine was going on here. But these boys would become ill, and they would finally say, look, I love you, but I got to go. I can't stay with you. I'm sick. I've had 2 weeks worth of diarrhea or throwing up or whatever it is. And the thought occurs to me, and I asked her, and it was almost an insult. I said, did you cook for them or something? I mean, did you do their laundry? I mean, what? Did you mix a drink for them? I got to find something here. And at that point, they were not willing to cooperate anymore. I mean, it would be the logical conclusion. But and as far as I know, from the last I heard, she still remains single. And that her friend even went back to try to have the curse removed, but the houdon who had done it had moved away. So how do you overcome that? And in the resource section, it's I explain a basic guide to, if this is your curse. This is the basic thing you need to do who you need to seek out to get rid of it. Because you'll see so many who say, "Oh, I can absolve you of any curse you have." Well, it doesn't exactly work that way. You can't ask a Russian Orthodox priest to remove a Peruvian witch's curse. It just doesn't work that way. You have to. In your mind, the way your mind views this thing, it may very well work that the Russian Orthodox priest could remove it if that's what you think. But we have to know what you think. What cure is going to be bigger, better, and scarier than the curse, so that you feel you got it was effective. That's the psychology behind it. And so I outlined some basic details on how to approach that. If you've tried these things and it hasn't worked, you need to go back to the source. You need to go back to the same line that the curse was generated from, because that's where your relief will fall into. And that's a cheating way of trying to direct somebody to regain their own mental clarity over this. But it often works.
Well, David, where can our listeners go to find out more about you?
Well, there's, what's that thing called? Facebook has a little bit on there. I tend to post the odd comment on there. And then there's really not, I just don't really know much about the Internet. My sister maintains the Facebook page, and then the Curse television page I visit quite frequently. I know I have some site. Frankly, I don't know the name of it, but I'd be glad to email it to you, and you can put it on your website where they can go to look at what the books look like. The books will be, I have two of them coming out, but the one through Mystic Glass, which I'm being threatened with death daily by my editor for, should be coming out here within the next few weeks, and that's coming out on Smashwords, the electronic books. And it's dirt cheap because I'm not like the Houdans who charge $1,500 to remove a curse. If you want what advice we have in this, it's $2. That's all it costs to download this electronic book. You can read it, or you can delete it, or whatever you want to after you're done with it.
Wonderful. Well, you know what, David, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing more from you. We're looking forward to the books. And this has really actually been a very interesting and informative discussion. Thank you so much.
I hope I didn't bore you.
Absolutely
not at all.
No, this is great. Well, so, David, do you know, or can you tell us, will the show be back on next season?
We haven't heard yet. I haven't heard one way or the other yet, which is actually, from a psychological perspective, that's a good sign that they probably will. They might very well bring it back. I certainly hope they do. It was great fun making it. Kinetic Content, who developed the program, Mark, who was the creator of the show, this is his brain genius behind it. I had an absolute wonderful time making this show, and I think it's a very good show. I think it was one that needed to be done, and I'm glad to be part of it. They're fantastic people, and A&E and Bio, those are wonderful people as well for taking the risk on the show like they did. I think it was great to work with them, and I like them all. They're all great people. Not at all the cigar-chomping, backstabbing Hollywood types I had expected at all. Actually, really nice people. I was surprised.
Yeah, they're great. And A&E and Bio has had some really great programming lately, and I believe I've heard some new things that may be coming down the pike. So this is just great news, and we love the show, Cursed. We love you, David, and we really do appreciate you coming on tonight.
Well, thank you very much. I have been honored to be here, and I hope you will invite me back sometime.
Absolutely. Well, we're not going to push you, but maybe when your book comes out, we can have you back on.
Absolutely. Oh, that's motive. That's motivation to finish the book.
Your publisher slipped me some money to say that.
Yes. Yeah, oh, did she? Well, that certainly beats her threat of a guy named Guido showing up at my door. Like, I'll finish this. That was the last one, and I was like, Guido, really? He has a bent nose, and he's not afraid to hit you. Now, give me my book.
Oh, boy. Well, thank you so much, David, and I hope to talk to you very, very soon.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
That was pretty cool.
That was awesome.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It really was not what I expected.
How so?
It changed my perception of what a curse really is. I mean, from the discussion, it really appears to me now that these curses, whether or not a person believes in them, a lot of it is all within our own minds.
True. And, you can also say, and people can also say that that's the same, I guess that's the same perception that one would have for spirits and ghosts. It's all in the mind. It's your perception. It's your belief. It's the placebo effect. And then there's others that argue, the opposite of it. I mean, I've never come across or have ever been involved with curses, or that I would believe to be a curse. But that's not to say that I don't believe in them. I believe anything can happen, and I think from the conversation with David, Dr. Marsh, that there is that slight chance of the unexplained. He did mention that in his book there's that 1% of the cases that were studied that are just unanswered, or there's no answer for them. So there is still a possibility of it. But yeah, I think most of the times with a lot of people, they're quick to judgment, and they're quick to label things. And us, we always like to run the gamut of all different types of possibilities before we sort of settle on one, or at least that's the way that I tend to treat things. And so, there could be it, but I think with everything you just have to analyze them and study them and find out what could be the most likely causes, and if they're not debunked, I hate using that word, and if they're not that way, then there could be a possibility and a lend to belief that it could be a curse.
Well, I think one thing that I really would love to see when he mentioned about the Dybbuk box, and if they would be able to study that would really, really be interesting. As far as the Dybbuk box goes, I'm still undecided as to whether or not it's really real. I mean, the case for it is very strong, but then again, like you said, we look at all sides of it, and to have someone such as Dr. Marsh look at it and study it and come up with a conclusion, I think that would be absolutely interesting.
One of the things that I had come across, and I shared this with you before or earlier this week, on curses, and one in particular, I basically looked through the history of quote-unquote infamous curses that have been reported. And one that struck me, we've read about Haiti and all these other different, even abroad in the UK, all of these infamous curses that have happened to people or to groups or to individuals. One in particular that struck me was the Tecumseh curse. And I know this is right up your alley because it's Native American, but what struck me was and I don't want to say accuracy, but with the Tecumseh curse back in 1840, and I forgot the president at the time. Let me just see. I think I have it right here. William Henry Harrison in 1840. He was president. And during the battle of at Old Tippecanoe, Tecumseh was the leader of the opposition. And when William Henry Harrison's brigade fought and won, Tecumseh said that supposedly this is what had happened, that Tecumseh was going to put a curse on Mr. Harrison for defeating them. And when he became president, and then in 1840, he was killed. Now, the succession of this curse is as follows. Basically, every 20 years, there's an effect that happens to each and every president that is in office. So from 1840, you go to 1860, which is then now Abraham Lincoln, who we all know what happened to Abraham Lincoln in 1860. You go 20 years into the future, and in 1880, James Garfield died while in office. Go another 20 years, William McKinley. Another 20 years, Harding. Another 20 years in 1940 is Roosevelt. Another 20 years was the infamous 1960 John F. Kennedy. Now, when you get into 1980, there seems to be what people would say, a stop in the curse. And in 1980, that was when there was that attempt and assassination on Ronald Reagan. And now Ronald Reagan lived. Could that have been the break in the curse? People were speculating that. Now, if you go 20 years into the future on that, you get into 2000, 2001. Now, people are now correlating the whole 9/11 thing with this curse in the fact that there was supposedly a plane that was going to hit White House. And so, therefore, there could have been a possibility of another death during the presidency. It was just odd that the frequency of this whole thing, and you can correlate it in reports documented of all these things happening, that it possibly could go back to a curse. I don't know, but it's just odd that every 20 years something like this has happened, and that story struck me while we were doing this.
Well, like he mentioned, with the Native Americans, the belief system that we have in place is strong. It is very, very strong. Now, is it possible that maybe, just maybe, the suggestion that this is in place and perpetuated by the tribes that believe it? I mean, is it possible that the suggestion that there is a curse in place make it happen? I mean, that's
but how do you make all these presidents die?
And if what I read on it was like every 20 years, like clockwork. Right.
I know, it was just odd. It was just weird. I mean, it could just be, as always, and I always have this argument, that it's coincidence. Things like this happen all the time. There's always an attempt of murder, and I'm not saying all these presidents that were in office at the time were the victim of murder. They had died, tragically of ailments or things of that nature, not necessarily been shot or killed or murdered or assassinated. So, over the course of over 100 years, things like this I would expect to happen. But it was just odd. This whole 20-year gap was very strange to me.
Mhm. Well, I guess it just goes to show, don't mess with the Native Americans.
Yeah. That's why you're still on the show.
Thank you.
You will never get booty from this show if I have anything to say about it.
And I'm so happy to hear you say that.
All right. Do you want to go on to some of the fan mail?
Yeah. Yes. I've been looking forward to this one. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
let me go first. This we've got 3 pieces of email here that we wanted to read, but one in particular. Lucy and I have sort of been biting our tongues over the last maybe 6 weeks? Has it been?
Mm-hmm. It seems like forever.
I know, it seems like forever, but we've been sort of biting our tongues, and let me just read you this email and then we'll get into it. So here it goes. This is from Richard Jensen, and it goes, Dear Anthony and Lucy, blah, 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 the show is great. Okay, here's the question. Not sure if you're aware of this, but there seems to be a lot of drama surrounding Aaron Houdini and some people that own and run a haunted location. Do you think maybe you can have Aaron on your show to talk about it and find out what happened? Best, Richard Jensen. Now, and thank you, Richard, for sending in that email. And as a matter of fact, ever since this whole issue and controversy and soap opera had started with Aaron Houdini and the haunted location, which is Poatstown, we did reach out to both parties. We did reach out to Aaron Houdini, and we reached out to the folks who run and operate Poatstown, which is Daryl Wisman and Jay Lynch. And we were not going to do a show one-sided, and I'm sure people have listened to Aaron being on radio shows, and then you may have heard Daryl Wisman and some folks like Chuck Manning, and I think Jay Lynch was on one show, but it was always one-sided. And we hate doing shows like that, especially when it when there is this drama, this controversy that goes on, because it's already been done. You know, these people have been on radio shows individually, separately. We wanted to have something different and have them both on to bring out the discussion and discuss it with each other one-on-one. We would give them the forum to do this and have it done. And at the time, Aaron had responded back to us and said he would gladly do it, of course, and the folks from Poatstown were not able to do it or did not want to do it or did not respond. So we declined and we told Aaron we weren't going to do the show. And the drama had played out. Now, I'll go very quickly with it for the folks that do not know about the whole issue and the whole circumstances surrounding the Aaron Houdini thing. But very quickly, it's sort of like a soap opera, and I like to call it The Young and the Stupid. Aaron had put on an event at the Poatstown School in Ohio back in October. And apparently this issue has sort of all started over some money that was owed to Aaron that was not paid by Poatstown. And it had to do something with, and again, we have not really received the real information. As far as I know, I have not heard the real answers to the reason as to why this possibly could have all started, but they're saying, or the word is out there, that it's possibly started from Aaron not getting the full amount of money that is owed to him for doing this event at Poatstown. And soon as this event had ended and Aaron had began posting on his website, on his Facebook page in November in regards to fraud and the fakery that had gone on at Poatstown, the haunted location, Poatstown in Ohio. And obviously there was no mention about monies not, owed or not being owed. It was basically around fraud, and that Aaron was on this mission now to basically put shine a light on the people who are creating these fakeries and these haunted locations so that, he becomes the Superman and wants pretty much to shine the light, let everybody see it, and give truth to the paranormal community. And obviously there were words going back and forth, accusations back and forth. People were getting involved. Paracelebs were getting involved, unbeknownst or unwanted of their own inclination. They were brought in from accusations from the other side. And it just got really disgusting. And Lucy and I pretty much gave up or had pretty much said, all right, we're not going to deal with this. We did not want to be involved in this at all. It sort of died down, and then I think it was in December, there was this quote-unquote fake 911 call from Aaron to the sheriff's office in Ohio in regards to Poatstown having an event with underage kids and drinking. Oh, I'm sorry, this was New Year's Eve. And he supposedly made this call. Now, this call is on YouTube, and you can clearly make out that it is Aaron on the phone calling and making this. And he had admitted to it sounding like him, and he had posted that on Aaron had posted that on his Facebook saying that it was him, but he said it was not him, that it was all this, electronic software that manipulated and created it to sound like him. Anyway, that had come forward and been broadcasted on Facebook hundreds and hundreds of times. And then it came to a point where Aaron actually apologized in early January. And he put an apology post on his Facebook and said that they were just going to, move on from here, and that was it. And then it started up again. And when it started up again, it got very heated and very vindictive. And there were accusations that I'm not going to repeat here, but there were accusations that had come forward from both sides in regards to this issue, and it just really got disgusting. So I get frustrated with things like this, and I said to Lucy, you know what, I'm going to try one more time, and we're going to try and get, again, both parties involved, because we had enough. This was enough, and I think the people who were listening and hearing and reading all this on Facebook and on other radio shows, it just got to be disgusting, and it got to be too much. And we said, let's have both of them on. Let them talk it out. Even if it gets ugly, whatever. At least they got a chance to actually talk it out and possibly have some sort of answers or something come to fruition where something can be settled. We would hope that could happen. So we reached out to Aaron, And we had reached out to Chuck Manning, who is the owner of globalparanormal.com, who has been putting out articles in regards to this. And so we wanted to bring him on board, as well as we reached out to Jay Lynch, who is part of Post Town. But at the time, the other gentleman, Daryl Wisman, who is the part owner and operator of Post Town, he was going through some family health issues, so we didn't want to bother him. We respected him. So we reached out to both parties, and I can actually read you the response. I can read you both responses from both sides. And the first one is the statement from Aaron. He apparently had said to us that he can no longer go on the air with any of the parties that are involved because he now says that he's got a court case against these folks for slander, for defamation of character, and for legal reasons, as he's indicated, of the fraud that this haunted location has put forward. So here is the response that we got from Aaron Houdini. I sincerely ask all parties involved or affected by the malicious and negligent acts from the Booth brothers, Chuck Manning, Daryl Wisman, and the entire Pottstown School clan to just take a few moments and read all the facts in relation to the topics being discussed. Chuck Manning, the Booth brothers, Ivana Booth, Daryl Wisman have all attempted to attack my personal character in an attempt to discredit me because I showed they fake paranormal evidence. I am placing a link on my personal website with pictures, court documents, emails, text messages, and more showing how vicious and negligent these people have been. Please take a moment and investigate the entire matter yourself, and do not believe these individuals and the ignorant claims. Furthermore, I can have no contact with these people because it has become a legal matter. At this time, I must sit quietly as they continue their assault on me while my attorney finalizes all paperwork, and the parties are faced with the criminal charges and lawsuits for defamation of character, knowingly falsifying court documents, extortion, criminal mischief, assault, terroristic threatening, and misconduct. I also want to apologize to any person hurt or affected by these individuals and their ignorant actions. My sincerest apologies, Aaron Houdini. Now, I want to give you the response that we received from Chuck Manning, and this is his response. Lucy, I appreciate the offer, but until Aaron can offer some actual evidence, then I'm not sure what I would have to debate him on. I just checked again, and to date he has yet to prove one shred of evidence that has not been debunked. So how does one debate a fantasy? Look, I know what it's about. I own a radio station, but I can't debate fantasy. Thank you anyway. Aaron needs help, not a forum where he can continue to fall into the hole he has created. Why not do a show on that? Not many listeners in it, I know. I'm not hating on you, Lucy. It's what people want. Unfortunately, I don't. I want Aaron to get help that he needs. Now, I understand the frustration, and I understand legal matters. And recently, I actually went on Aaron's Facebook page, and once again, he has created this paradrama and just spewing these things, whether or not they're true or false, spewing these things on Facebook and posting them. And I've noticed he does it at night, usually late at night. And he gets people riled up, and people will respond and post back on his page and either debate or love him for what he's doing. And I posted on his page, and I said, listen, Aaron, regardless of the fact of whether or not you're true or you're false or they're true and they're false, I think the matter should not be put out on Facebook. I said, and especially if you have a court case coming, you should really sit back, document everything that they're doing to you, and build your case. That way you can then bring it to your lawyer and say, listen, they've been doing this, and I've sat quietly on the side. I haven't done anything. His response was that his lawyers had said to him, well, if what you're saying is actually true, then it's okay for you to post. I kind of find that hard to believe, and I think what I'm feeling right now is that Aaron has this need for attention and is utilizing Facebook in a way to get that attention. I've said this many times, and I've made jokes about this many times before, that, people need to get away from Facebook. You see so many kids nowadays on their iPhones with their heads down, texting people who are probably standing 10 feet away from them. And nobody is looking up. Nobody is engaging in the world. And to me, Facebook is a way to interact, to socialize, to keep up to date with people. I really am disturbed at the fact of how people use Facebook to create drama and to create soap opera. I hate when they utilize the services that are there to broadcast personal things. I mean, there are things that Aaron has put on his page, and I'm not damning him on anything. This is just my feeling about what has been going on, regardless if it's Aaron or not. It's the act that he's been putting forward. And to me, Facebook is like Sims, almost. Or people tend to treat it as though it's the game Sims. You know, it's people get into this mindset that you're in a different world when you're on Facebook, and you can put pictures up, and you can say this, and you can do that, and you can link to this one and share what this one's got. It's almost as if it's like the game of Sims. You're playing a different life on Facebook. But what people don't realize is that what you put on Facebook doesn't just stay there. It actually spills out onto the real world. And what you say can be damning outside of that world. You think you're doing well and good to post personal, possibly criminal behavior that somebody's been doing or has done in the past on Facebook, and you think that is normal and you think that is okay. To me, it's disturbing. To me, you have to be disturbed to do that. If you've got a problem with someone, do it the normal way. Either go to court, contact them directly, get it over with that way. What he's been doing on Facebook is really disgusting, and it really pulls down the paranormal community, because even though he really isn't, Aaron is not really involved in paranormal, I'd say, Lucy, 98% of the events that he does are inclusion of paranormal excursions and and paranormal investigations that people put on. So he's put himself within that world. I don't believe him to be a part of the paranormal world, but because he has so many followers, because he's been involved in these paranormal events, it is just disheartening to see now people dividing themselves. There's groups dividing themselves. There's people who are quitting the field now, mainly because of what's been going on here, because they're just so disgusted with how people have been acting. And, there's competition in everything. And I'm sorry to ramble on, Lucy, but I'm going to give you your tongue on this. Just give me 1 second. There is competition in everything. In academics, in politics, there's competition in business, in sports, in Hollywood. There's always going to be somebody who's competing against somebody else. There's always going to be somebody that says, I've done it better, or, I've got the best evidence, or I've got this analysis, I've done that better. That's great. That should actually fuel people more to do better themselves, not to then create this backlash and this fight against people. And that's why I've always said I hate this drama. I don't like to get involved in it because it's stupid. It's just wasted energy. And, I want to say this correctly, so I don't want to make it seem as I'm offending anyone, but within the paranormal community, it sort of involves a wide variety of folks, You get a wide variety of people who are within the paranormal field. It could be, loosey-gooseys who are very brand new to the whole paranormal thing and are gung-ho and they do it for a hobby. And then you've got on the other spectrum, on the other side, are people who are, really analytics, almost what you would call a quote-unquote scientist of the paranormal. They're really die-hard people who really take it seriously. And you've got that gap in between, and it's a whole variety of personalities. And again, paranormal, you really don't need an education level. There's no collegiate degree. There's no university that you need to go to in order to fulfill being a paranormal investigator. So it's very different as far as the groups are concerned, the people involved in the paranormal. It's very different than the academics or Hollywood or business or music, It's a little bit different that way. And because of that difference, people tend to sling mud a lot. The shit sort of hits the fan a lot more within those areas, where if you were to have a physics department who's debating the quantum mechanics group and saying, you know what, your stuff is not believable and here's why. That doesn't tend to happen in the paranormal. It's, oh, your evidence is crap, you're shit. And then you get the people who say, oh, you've done this. Oh, you've got a criminal record. And, it gets so ugly, and it just makes it disgusting for people who take this seriously. And to me, that's what this whole Aaron Houdini thing is happening. And I tried to talk to him and tell him, take it off of Facebook. Just if you've got an issue and you've got a problem and you have fraud, you have evidence of fraud against this particular haunted location, show it. Don't come out and spew it, okay? Don't come out and say they've done this, they've done that, and don't have the evidence. I have not seen one piece of evidence yet on the fact of fakery. He has put forward evidence of other things that are disgusting, that have nothing to do with the original claim that he has made, but he has not put forward this evidence of fakery and fraud, which is where this whole thing had been based on. So I'm trying to think of the word. I encourage people to bring forward fraud in this field, but if you're going to do it, please bring the evidence. Please bring something to show why you are claiming this to be. I can stand up here and say, such and such location in Minnesota, they claim to be haunted, but you know what, they're not. I know that they're faking it. I can say that too. And who's going to believe me? Who's going to now discredit me because of the words that I've said? But if I'm able to put forward the evidence and say, okay, I've got this person caught on camera faking a shadow or faking some sort of sound or EVP or whatever it may be, I can believe that a little bit more, or I can debate it maybe on a higher level than that. But if somebody's just coming out and saying they're fake, they've done this, I know they've done that, I know they've done that, it's not believable. And then when you go and then you start to belittle them and call names and talk about adultery and rape and all this other stuff that has happened supposedly that people have done in the past, it really gets to be disgusting. And that's when I pretty much gave up on this whole topic. But I didn't want to let it go, and I had talked to Lucy. I really didn't want to talk about this, but I'm tired of biting my tongue, and I just wanted to get it out. And when I saw this email last week, I said, okay, this is the sign. This is not a coincidence. This is the sign to tell me, okay, you've got to talk about it. And I'm sorry if I've offended anybody or if I pissed anybody off listening tonight, but this is from the bottom of my heart. It just disgusts me to see things like that. If you're going to have something debated on an intellectual level and stop getting into this crap about he said, she said, and all this other stuff, bring the evidence, bring it forward, and we can talk about it then.
Well, you know what? I totally agree. The way we've talked about it, it has been very, very hard to keep quiet about this. And there's two things that I've gotten from this. The first one is, like you were saying about Facebook. Facebook has a tendency to bring out the immaturity in people. The things that I'm seeing on Facebook, the attention grabbing, look at me, look at me. What this started out as was a supposed accusation of fraud at a location. It ended up evolving into something that was nasty, that was dirty, that was totally disgusting. And the fact that it went beyond the original accusation and it went into other areas to the point where today, if you were to look at it, the original idea, the original accusation is lost. It went beyond that. It went into personal issues. And if there's a problem, if there's something going on, I think we need to step back and say, you know what, I'm going to be adult about this. I'm going to address this one-on-one with this other person. Work it out. but not on Facebook. Facebook is not the place for it. The fact that, there's all these words about lawsuits flying back and forth. I'm not a legal expert, but you know what? I would think that any reputable attorney would tell the parties involved to keep it off Facebook, keep it to yourself, and get your case together. This has gone on beyond all of that. This has gone into these horrible personal attacks. Now, I don't want to take sides either for or against, but the bottom line is it's got to stop. It is harming the whole community as a whole. Now, another thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if it's a direct result of this whole situation or not, is there seems to be a lot of sites and people that are making it their mission now to call out frauds and fakes. Almost to the point where when you look at all this, it's almost like there's this mindset of a witch hunt. Salem came to mind. I mean, it's like now everything that someone's posting, there's someone saying, oh, well, this isn't right, and this could be a phone app. Regardless, there are going to be people that are going to falsify evidence. It happens. We know that. But there are a lot of others who really, truly are enamored of this field and work very hard and are very honest about what they present. But because of the atmosphere that's developed from it, it's like a witch hunt. I mean, it is absolutely disgusting. And it's not going to make me leave the paranormal field, but I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of reputable people stepping back, and that, to me, is the saddest thing of all. So I think what I'm trying to say is that both sides, both parties, need to step back, regardless of what you feel. Take it to court. Work out your differences away from the public eye. Once there's a resolution, then you can come forth. If you have the proof, come forth then. But in the meantime, what has happened in a person's personal life needs to be off limits, at least on Facebook.
And I agree with you. There needs to be, and I don't know if you have this same opinion, Lucy, but I do believe there should be people who question evidence that other people are bringing forward. There is a need for that. It's sort of like the police in the paranormal community, but people take it a little too far. And there's a classy way, and I've said this before, an intelligent way to have a debate over what somebody is proposing as evidence. You coming on and trying to convince that person who is bringing forward the evidence that it is fake will not happen. First of all, nobody is going to apologize and admit they're wrong. That's number one. They're never going to really do that. Number two, the people who have done it may not have faked it. It may look fake or it may sound fake, but it may not have been faked to them. It may have been, it could be explained in any other way. And you come forward and say, oh, that's fake crap. You guys are useless, or you're a waste. Stop it, whatever. You really shouldn't be doing that. Debate it. Say, listen, I don't believe that to be true. Here are some questions that I want to ask you. What was the weather like that day? How many people were on your team? How many people were in that room at that time? Debate it in an intellectual way. Don't just come out and say, oh, you guys are stupid. That's an orb. That, when people say that they don't believe in orbs, oh, that's an orb. That's stupid. They dismiss it constantly like that. And they're not questioning whether or not it to be true. Who's to say you're true in saying that? But I encourage people to bring forward the fraud, the fakery, or question people and their evidence that they brought forward. But do it professionally. Do it in an intellectual way that actually uplifts and creates a higher level in this community. And stop the bickering and stop the bashing and the bullying that people are doing. It just is ridiculous. You are the one that will lose credibility in that, and you make everybody else look stupid.
You know what, Anthony, I just want to mention something in the chat room. Flycatch ask the question, what makes one reputable in this study?
In what
you
study?
can't be a professional of the paranormal. You can't be professional in an unknown science. And
right.
I don't think that we're saying that there are any professionals. We've said this more than once. There are no experts. There are no masters of the science. But to me, and this is my personal opinion, and I agree with everything that you just said, but in my opinion, for someone to be reputable is someone that's willing to discuss their evidence, someone that's willing to answer questions about it, someone that's
right.
willing to go through what they went to get this. And when they're
right.
presenting something, they're willing to take the questions. Not everybody's going to agree that what evidence that we find is going to be real. I mean, we've come across it ourselves with people that we've investigated with, where they've got a picture and this is it, this is the real thing. But then again, when it came time to discussion, they refused to listen to any other conflicting opinions. I think being reputable is being able to discuss what you have and to let others look and discuss what you have.
And just to spend one more second on this, Flycatch had just posted in chat that this is the same problem in the Bigfoot community. I think it's actually even worse in the Bigfoot community. It's sad to say that, but it's actually, I think, even worse. There are people that will deliberately go after people consistently and create damning statements about other people within the Bigfoot community. There's almost like a lynch mob amongst them. I'm not sure why, but it's a very strange development that I've noticed within the last year and a half within the Bigfoot community. So it's sad to say, but it's actually almost worse than the paranormal, the whole spiritual paranormal field.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, so let's get on to some nicer emails, Lucy.
Okay. This one was sent on our Facebook email, and it goes, "Hello, I just wanted to say that Lucy's new show was great today. Thank you. And I also wanted to comment on the show with Carol from the Monroe Institute, which I caught up with today. I actually had to stop listening for a moment around 69. I actually got a little overwhelmed at what Anthony was saying about the aha moment and when all these weird things come together. And then tears swelled up when Lucy then says, maybe we don't have to wait. Don't worry, smiling now. But, well, what I'm trying to say is I don't know what's going on, but so many weird things every single day since June, and I try to look for answers when I'm not avoiding or trying to ignore it. All I do know is that I didn't ask for it, so yes, it can happen to anybody. And I wish I was crazy so I could take a pill and these things would hit the bricks, or I could go back to seeing life as I used to. Also, Carol said something that really hit home with me when she said about knowing there's an afterlife, unlike reading or learning. I always believed in God, but now it's so different now. I am certain that there is, and now I'm actually unnerved about it. So anyway, thank you for having these shows. It helps so much to educate and gives me, myself, a little better understanding of what is going on out there and that others experience things also. Take care. God bless."
That was nice.
This was a really, really sweet email. And we chose not to use the name of the person who sent it because it is a very personal email. And what I want to say to this person is that thank you so much for opening up and sharing that with us. I mean, what we do here, if it helps one person open up a window to experience something new or to explain something that's happening, then I think what we're doing here is well worth it.
Great.
Okay.
Do you have another one?
Yeah, this one too. This one was also from our Facebook page, and it was sent after I did my tarot reading show. Lucy, Anthony, I know this may sound out in left field, but today in the chat room, Anthony was talking about 2013 and if we feel change coming. I associate and get a lot of messages from Spirit through songs. For a while now, I'm getting in my head the old school song by Grand Funk Railroad. I'm getting closer to my home. I feel this is true for many of us. Great show today, Lucy. Peace, love, and light, Janae. And this was from Janae Bowerman. Janae,
that was
thank
nice.
you so much.
I remember when you were doing your tarot reading show, I think one of the callers was talking about change, and that's what sort of inspired me to bring that topic up about if anybody else feels this change in 2013. And when I brought up that question in the chat room, it just opened up the floodgates for people talking about how they've noticed it as well too. So that may be a good question to leave everybody tonight with. Do you really feel a change in 2013 for yourself, or do you feel the anticipation of something possibly changing for this year? Or is there something that it's sort of now there's this fire built in you that you want to make a change happen for 2013? I joke around and I say, we lived through the end of the world on December 21st. This is sort of like a second chance at life, that maybe we should start to make it better. And, maybe that's the feeling that everybody has now because of that build-up to 12/21. And now that we've sort of surpassed that, this is sort of like grace. And maybe this is a time that we should make some sort of change, small or big.
Well, I do have to say 2013 change has slapped me right in the face. And I've been feeling the changing coming along probably for about the last 2 years. And one of the things that I'm finding really, really wonderful is the fact that a lot of people are feeling this change. It's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call for everybody to open up and to learn as much as you can and to question. Don't take all these changes blindly. You still have the responsibility to yourself and to others to question. I think one of the best things that we have as human beings is the fact that we do have free will. We can accept something or we can discount it. And I think what we need to do is to move forward, accept change, but I also think we also need to question because there's a lot of answers out there, and they just might be the answers that individually we're all searching for.
Beautifully stated.
Just the ramblings from the ADD kid.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me. Let's go on to the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And this week, our fan is Sandy Trenkamp of Northern Kentucky. A few little likes about Sandy. She likes country music, rock music, ghost hunters, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, gotta be a good person, Edgar Allan Poe, and of course, she likes Paranormal Review Radio. Thank you so much for being a fan, Sandy, and congratulations.
Yeah, Sandy posts all the time on our, whenever we post things on Facebook, she always has some great comments, so congratulations, Sandy. Lucy, before you get on to your next part, I really want to stress everybody listening right now to listen to what Lucy is going to introduce for next week. I am, I am really excited to have this person on, and I'm really excited to talk about this because this is something brand new that I don't think a majority of people have thought about. If you are a paranormal investigator or if you're just interested in the paranormal itself, this will maybe make you think differently the next time you go to a haunted location, or may make you think differently about how we interpret. I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'll have Lucy explain. But we were supposed to have this person on in November, and things had happened, and we had to push it till now. So I am really, really excited to do next week's show. Go ahead, Lucy. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, you know what? Getting back to the show and Dr. Marsh, there's a saying that what goes around comes around. And I don't know about you, but tonight's show made me think twice about ever doing wrong to another person. I would hate to have it come back to me, whether or not it's a curse or whether it's not just something in my mind. Whether it's curse or karma, the universe does have a way of returning the favor. So we want to thank Dr. Marsh for stopping by, and it was a fascinating interview. But let's talk about some other questions now. Have you ever thought, after investigating a location, that you didn't get the answers to your questions during the EVP session? Well, think about this question. Am I speaking and saying the questions properly? Should I ask my questions in reverse instead of normal speech? Well, our guest next week might say yes to that. Brian Kalek is a paranormal researcher and author from Omaha, Nebraska. And he's going to be here to talk to us about reverse speech and how we should start looking at EVPs differently. Brian is going to talk about some mind-bending theories on string theory, dimensions, space, EMF, and, of course, reverse speech. You know what? This could change the way we all investigate the paranormal. So do not miss this show. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. You guys, you rock. Anthony, thank you for being the best co-host in the whole world. So, until next week, dear peeps, have a wonderful and paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio. Paranormal Review Radio.